What's up, y'all? It's me, your boy Preheat. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about the patch 8.0 Fire Mage guide. We're going to be going over talents. We're going to be going over what Fire Mages are looking like going into Uldir. The general consensus is that Fire Mages are pretty shit right now. But this video hopefully is going to dispel some of that and leave you guys with a little bit of, some hope going into the raid tier. So without further ado, let's dive into the guide and see what's in store for Fire Mages going into the first raid tier. So first up, we got our tier 1 talents, Firestarter, Pyromaniac, and Searing Touch. Now, from what I've tested, how I've been playing so far, we're going to be mostly using Firestarter or Searing Touch. Searing Touch at the moment seems to provide, well, obviously it provides a lot more mobility when it comes to using a talent in the first tier. Firestarter, another great talent to have, but you really have to take into account the first 10% of the boss's health. You have to figure, is the last 30% of a boss's health, or is the boss have adds that are going to be cleaved down fast enough? That mobility and that first 10% of the damage you're getting out of Firestarter is really going to be where you're going to juggle between choosing those two talents. I've been really enjoying Searing Touch in dungeons. I've been really enjoying it just for the mobility aspect. It's a great talent, but of course in a raid scenario, if you're pushing a DPS check or you're doing something in that type of in that realm, you're going to be wanting to take Firestarter. But again, it's completely boss dependent. It's completely situational. You have to really just figure out what's going on in the fight. If there's adds, if the boss needs an execute phase or whatnot, that's where you're going to be making that choice. For our tier 2 talents, as I've said in every other one of my videos, Shimmer is definitely the default choice for me here. Blazing Soul and Blast Wave, they are situational, but Blast Wave doesn't really provide any value in terms of raid encounters. Blazing Soul, it's okay. If you're going to be taking a lot of AoE damage, it might be considered, but I think Shimmer is just the go-to. It gets you out of everything you need to do, and you can keep casting while you Shimmer out of things. So again, Shimmer, definitely the default choice. For tier 3, so right now, there's this kind of debate going on that, Rune of Power is always seen as this, like, the highest DPS talent, and while I completely agree with that statement, going into a raid tier, I think Encounter's Flow is a lot, I'm not going to say the safer choice, because people seem to think that because it means safer, it means worse. In order to use Rune of Power optimally, you need to understand how the talent works, and you also need to have 100% uptime in that talent for it to be beneficial. If you are going into a fight and you aren't sure of the mechanics, and you aren't sure if you're able to get out of situations, or you just don't think you're going to be able to stand in that rune for the full 10 seconds, then Encounter's Flow is going to be a much better talent for you. Rune of Power, of course, it gives you a lot of more burst potential in terms of your actual window, but overall, Encounter's Flow is definitely the talent you're going to be wanting to take in Uldir, going into Uldir, at least until you get more comfortable with the fights and the mechanics and all that stuff. So if you're going for a high risk, I'm gonna say high risk, low reward type of scenario, Rune of Power is probably your choice. But if you want to play it safe and you want to have the overall damage buff that it gives, Encounter's Flow is probably going to be your option. For the tier 4 talents, sadly to say, Flame On is definitely the highest single target talent in that tier. Phoenix Flames is more of a burst AoE type of talent. I've been using it a lot in dungeons just because it gives you that extra instant cast, free crits, you keep your crit streaks rolling. Phoenix Flames is definitely going to be used in AoE situations. For burst, Alex Shaz's Fury, it is probably the highest damage on AoE, I'm pretty sure it is actually, but then again, you have to be considering that you have to be standing close to melee range or in melee range in order for that talent to take effect, because the range is obviously not like you're wearing the legendary helm from Legion, so you have to remember that. But in terms of single target, and I think in general on AoE fights, Flame On is probably going to be your choice. If you're tier 5, completely situational once again. In my opinion, Frenetic Speed is probably going to be your go-to. Gives you that little movement speed buff to get out of things really quickly, and that's just generally my default option. Of course, if the fight requires more CC, like Coven in Antorus, Ring of Frost, Ice Ward can be beneficial as well, but then again, situational. Tier 6. Now, Conflag is, from my experience, pretty shit. It doesn't do much damage. It's kind of that passive set it and forget it type of talent. I'm not gonna say I'm not a fan, but I'm not gonna say I'm impressed. It's just kind of replacing Unstable Magic, which we already know, and we all know is not the greatest talent that Blizzard's implemented into the Fire specs. So Conflag is your go-to, just set it, forget it type of thing. If you are in an AoE scenario, Living Bomb is probably going to be my choice. I've been using it all the time in dungeons, haven't been using Flame Patch at all, just because Living Bomb gives you that extra cleave, that extra AoE, but you can also still pump out your damage into a specific target. If you require constant AoE over the course of a fight, the AoE adds down, then Flame Patch might be a better option, but Living Bomb is probably going to be my go-to when it comes to burst AoE. For that exponential fucking increase of damage, not exponential, but it's really, really high on a lot of targets. And just in general, if you have a priority ad to kill, Living Bomb is probably the way to go if there's AoE. For tier 7, for the last tier. So in my 3-4 weeks on BFA so far, I've been using Meteor all the time, have not touched Kindling, haven't touched Pyroclasm. Meteor is kind of that talent that everyone loves to hate and everyone hates to love it. It's got a lot of burst potential. You put your Rune of Power down, you throw your Meteor out, Combustion, that Meteor is definitely doing a hell load of damage, especially if they're sitting in the patch it leaves on the ground. It's also on a 45-second cooldown, so you're going to have it in between your Combustion phases, which gives you that extra little damage we need right now outside of Combustion. So I've been using Meteor pretty much the entire time. Pyroclasm and Kindling, I don't know. It feels really clunky right now with our haste and the combustion duration to use Pyroclasm, so I haven't been using it. Kindling, it just doesn't seem as worth as it used to be in Legion, just because we're not necessarily critting as much, or we're not critting as much for sure, that's guaranteed. And I just feel like Meteor is probably the best talent to take according to what I've seen and from what I've tested, so those are going to be my talents. So for the optimal raid build for single target, we'll be taking Meteor, Conflag, Frenetic Speed, Flame On, Incanter's Flow, and you can either choose between Searing Touch and Firestarter. It depends on the situation. I've been using Searing Touch in my single target builds, and the only thing I would change for that from AoE would probably be Phoenix Flames, and then I would take Living Bomb. That's the only reason really where you change your AoE scenario. In an AoE scenario anyways, your tier 7, you'd still be taking Meteor. It's crazy damage. So yeah, that's it for talents. As for the rotation, so from what I've been looking at, and once you've played Fire with the eye level you're able to obtain right now, so about 340, 345, you start to get into a feel of how the rotation should be going. And if you're playing with Searing Touch, the rotation starts to feel a little bit more fluid. It's out of the 3 specs, I still feel like Fire is probably still the most fluid feeling. It still feels the most natural. You know, if you're playing Frost, in my opinion, you're just playing Brain Freeze Raiding Room, and then in Arcane, you're spamming Arcane Blast pretty much the entire time. So I don't find those specs fun. When you look at Fire right now, and if you're playing the standard setup that we just talked about, the Searing Touch rotation, you're not playing with Firestarter, so you're going into your Combustion rotation right away. The rotation sort of similar to Legion if you're playing with Pyromaniac, but with Meteor it's a little different. So on the pull, you're going to be wanting to drop your pre-pot, hardcast at a Pyroblast. If you get a crit, if you're lucky enough with the crit percentage we have right now, if you get a crit, you're going to drop your Rune of Power, you're going to Fire Blast, you're going to throw out your Meteor and pop Combustion before it hits the floor, and then you're going to go into your instant cast rotation, which is your instant Pyros, your Fire Blasts, and then if you have any time left, you're going to be casting Scorch to get in those extra Pyroblasts. If you're playing with Firestarter, the rotation is the same as it always has been. You're going to be just pumping out your Fireballs and your instant cast Pyroblasts when you crit, and at 90% health, hopefully you've timed it well enough that you have your instant cast Pyroblast, you'll drop your Rune of Power, and then you'll go into your instant cast rotation, just as it always has been. But right now, it does definitely feel fluid. The damage that Fire is able to pump out in our burst window is pretty good. And I'm not disappointed with the fluidity of the spec. Right now, what I'm disappointed with is that it seems as though Blizzard really hasn't taken a look at Fire Mages extensively and said, okay, there are a couple of key aspects that need to be tweaked in the toolkit. Right now, you're noticing that we don't have enough casts in that build to keep our crits rolling, and with the crit rating that we're able to get right now, it doesn't feel as fluid as it used to be, just because we're so used to playing with upwards of 60% crit. So the spec doesn't feel as nice as it used to. But I think as time goes on, hopefully Blizzard will bump some things up, or at least in my opinion, the biggest hope for us right now is that Flame On becomes baseline, and we get a little bit of a bump in terms of damage because it doesn't seem as competitive as the other two specs, and it's unfortunate because fire to me is one of the specs that should be always, not to brag about mages or not to talk like big about them, but fire mages should always be good damage dealers. They shouldn't be the one of the specs that's always suffering. And as a pure DPS class, I think that Blizzard's intention is to kind of make us try out other specs and see what the mage is about in general. But right now fire just doesn't seem, it seems a little bit lackluster. There's something missing, and my hope is that Blizzard recognizes that and they make some tweaks that are much needed right now. So all in all, guys, yes, fire mages are not the best spec to play out of the mage right now. They aren't as fun as they used to be. There are some things that need to be tweaked, but as it stands, it's, you know, it is what it is. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it, guys. I hope the video helped. If there is any discrepancies that you guys have found in relation to the video, please let me know. And as always, take care, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out. What kind of Blizzard employee looks at fire right now and he's like, hey man, this is a good spec. We're actually gonna nerf their best trait by 50%, dude.
Now Mage has a fucking healing spec. It's just fire.
Yeah, it's fucking conjure refreshment spec, dude.
Yes.